All right, so whenever you guys are ready.
Good morning. This is my team today. We're going to be discussing child abuse and understanding the long-term effects of childhood trauma as abuse.
So this is our agenda. First, we will be discussing the background information. Second, we're going to be discussing the issue, the different types of abuse, our solution, the limitations to our solution, and ending with our conclusion.
Child abuse. Child abuse is any form of mistreatment or violence to a child from an adult. Usually, the mothers and fathers are the top two abusers because they live in the same home, so it's easier for them to do it.
So the issue at hand is how childhood trauma can cause different mental illnesses like PTSD, anxiety, depression, or bipolar disorder. This can affect the individual's behavior, which can lead to different educational difficulties and therefore making the individual unable to find a job. A writer from Gulf News, Sabu Strada, states how certain behaviors in adulthood may stem from a hidden or past trauma that the individual can find themselves repeating a negative pattern. Furthermore, they may find it difficult to form and maintain relationships.
Now we're going to be discussing the different types of abuse. First, we have emotional abuse, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. The different factors of emotional abuse include degradation. Degradation is when the abuser uses hurtful words on a child. As a result, the child will feel worthless and will lower their self-esteem, and it can lead them to feel anguish. Next, we have neglect. Neglect can lead the child to feel lonely, uncared for, shameful. Consequently, the child will suffer poor health and will begin to have weight problems, sleep disturbances, have poor behavior, and low self-esteem. Finally, we have abandonment, where the parents or parent are absent in the child's life. In this situation, the child can be deeply in pain. It can feel hatred towards their parents or guardian. Over time, the child can develop trust issues, borderline disorder, and fears of being alone. And in this page, we took this picture because it represents how the child feels in their minds. They feel trapped in their own mind and have no one to look for help.
Sexual abuse.
This is physical abuse. Some forms of physical abuse can be seen as extreme methods of discipline and punishment. It can also, various perspectives of what discipline is can also play a factor. Like one family could see what another family does as abuse, and one family could see it as just like, I guess, punishment towards the child misbehaving. Another factor would be violent parents. Starting off with substance abuse. According to a website called childwelfare.gov, studies show that adults who suffer from addiction are more likely to have abusive behavior towards their children. Difficulty controlling their anger. Some parents with no anger management and anger issues are also shown to show more abusive behavior towards their children. And then alcoholism, that also came from the website childwelfare.gov. Studies also show that alcoholics are more likely to have abusive behavior towards their children.
Sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is defined as any act forced against someone without their consent. This can have lasting mental health problems in people, like long-term PTSD, eating disorders, and even suicidal behaviors. Usually the abuser is someone that they know, usually a friend, maybe even in their family or somebody in their community. This picture, it was a good picture because it shows, it shows the father, solution. One of our solutions is therapy. Therapy can help relieve depression and many mental health conditions. It is very good for somebody to talk to somebody about their problems because it can help very well. Yeah.
Support systems can also help the individual by expressing their past childhood trauma and build a network of support for one another.
Lastly, following support systems, we have forgiveness. Individuals must confront their negative emotions and feelings in order to understand them deeply and in order to begin the process of healing. Forgiveness will also benefit the victim when he or she forgives his or her offender by moving on from the past and reconciling their relationship with them, by decreasing levels of anxiety, anger, and depression. For one of my credibility citations, I have Kate Schwarzenberger, who has a PhD in the Department of Psychology at the University of Windsor. Wrote her article, Coping with Childhood Issues as Adults, that forgiveness includes improvement in regulating anger, fostering empathy, modifying attributional bias, and reducing aggression and individualism.
First up on our limitations is denial. Some victims like to ignore or are unaware of their mental illness or trauma that they have experienced. And most of them don't want to accept it. They don't want to have to deal with that every day and don't want to handle that trauma. And that just kind of plays hand in hand with ignoring it and not wanting to accept it.
Another limitation is refusal. It's not seeking the help. And most of the time this happens because people believe that they will be treated differently and saw differently in their community if they go get help for they need help for. And avoidance is just avoiding all the help that they need to get because they'll be different.
Next, we have lack of resources. The victim of child abuse can be in a situation where they have the inability to seek help, or be in a state where they cannot afford medical attention, such as therapy. Without medical attention, their mental illness can worsen and become severe, that they have to be isolated, or be sent to psychiatric wards. The severity of a mental illness could also send them to mental illness hospitals.
And lastly, we have society. Society can find it difficult for them to comprehend and can lead the individual to dissociate and isolate themselves. And a stereotype could be that adults can solve their problems individually and they don't need support from others. And in conclusion, childhood trauma can be a predictor and contributor to different psychological disorders, cognitive behaviors, and relationship awareness that can be impacted during adulthood. This can be resolved by different coping mechanisms in order to suppress their trauma. This concludes our presentation.
All right, good job.
Here's our work site.
Thank you. All right, Alexa, we'll start with you. Describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about your team's solution or conclusion.
One argument is from Kathy's paper. Hers is a cultural aspect in her paper, and one argument that she stated was that different cultures do impact how they receive child abuse or punishment. Some cultures may see child abuse as a form of just severe discipline. They don't see it as anything negative. And that really did change my paper because it really put forth my argument on why it's such a big thing and why some child abuse can be hidden because some cultures see it differently.
Okay. All right, Kathy, if you had another team member, what other perspectives or limitations could they have researched that would have made a useful contribution to the project?
Economic lens would have helped to bring in more statistics on why it is difficult for them to maybe find support and the limitations to why society may see them as not needing help because it can be a burden to them since they have to pay for mental health hospitals and child welfare.
All right, Luke. How did the group decide to include Alexa's perspective, lens, or conclusion into the overall presentation?
Alexa went with a scientific approach on the presentation. So she talked about the different types of mental illnesses that kids and adults can develop from their trauma, and that played a big role in our presentation, considering that our whole presentation is coping with the mental illnesses / trauma that they do develop over time, and that just, we really based it off of our paper.
Okay. And Alex, reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
Probably Alexa's paper, because it brought in a lot of facts and statistics, and just opened my eyes really to the problem and to know more about it.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you.